Ronald the Rules Lawyer. My coverage of the new Mythic rules for Pathfinder continues today. My first part covered the basics of Mythic characters and levels 1 through 11. Today we get to the Mythic Destinies, which start at level 12, to the abilities that are even more powerful for Mythic characters. Think of them as super archetypes that can be used in non-Mythic campaigns as well. They're all very powerful, and one even lets you become a god. My later videos in this series will cover Mythic monsters, the two new classes, the Animist and the Exemplar, and the new class archetypes. To see those, click subscribe and ring the bell. Also, supporting my Patreon gives you access to these videos immediately when I upload them. Alright, to introduce myself, I am Ronald the Rules Lawyer. I am a lawyer who runs tabletop role-playing games. For several years I ran an after-school, middle-school RPG class. Support my Patreon. It allows me to continue making this channel. I don't make money as a lawyer. For more info, look at the video that's thumbnailed on the screen. Supporting my Patreon gives you ad-free early access to most of my videos and exclusive content. Alright, so let's talk about the Mythic Destinies. They are super archetypes. Feats from these Mythic Destinies are just like the Mythic feats that I talked about in the first video. They can be gotten through your bonus Mythic feat slot that all Mythic characters get at every even level. The book says some campaigns might be best served by the PCs all having the same Mythic Destiny. For example, a campaign where the PCs defeat and then become the new Apocalypse Riders, the new Four Horsemen. Or a campaign in which all of the PCs are going to ascend to godhood. Also, even if you don't have a Mythic campaign, this book presents the option of using these Mythic Destinies as high-level archetypes. However, you would ignore any abilities that require Mythic points. When we go over the Mythic Destinies, you'll see that a lot of feats become even more powerful if you spend a Mythic point, or they might require a Mythic point to use to begin with. Alright, here are the Mythic Destinies. They all involve you becoming, in some way, a legendary hero that people will talk about for generations to come. If not, a mover and shaker who has some power to affect narratively the campaign world. All of them have the option at level 20 of taking a feat that gives you immortality. In fact, the write-ups about Mythic campaigns and having trials and ordeals not only reminded me of classic Tales and Legends, but they reminded me of the old Beck-Me basic D&D set and its master book, the fourth box set in the series that dealt with characters from level 26 to 36, where you're doing a set of trials that let you ascend to immortality and get to the fifth box set on Immortals. Many of you clicked the thumbnail because it talked about it being a god, but I think the most interesting part and wide-reaching effect of a Mythic campaign is on the style of play that these options call for. Nearly all of them make you a very important person within the campaign setting. You are the person that stories revolve around. It's not simply your party banding together against some evil threat, which is how many of Paizo's adventure paths are structured. You're not responding to events caused by a great evil. You are making events happen. As you can see, each Mythic Destiny has a hefty 4 pages dedicated to it. They each have a dozen or more feats, and many of these feats are long. I don't know how many times I had to deal with screenshotting something that was carrying over from one column to the next and having to edit it together for this video. All the Mythic Destinies are uncommon with the exception of becoming a god, of course, which is a rare option. So in your non-Mythic campaigns, this is not something you can just grab. Alright, the Mythic Destinies are, and there are 9 of them, Apocalypse Rider, Archfiend, Ascended Celestial, Beast Lord, the Broken Chain, Eternal Legend, Godling, Prophesied Monarch, and Wildspell. We're going to go through them and look at some sample feats from each of them, and we're going to save Godling for last. That's the rare one that lets you become a deity. Alright, the first one is the Apocalypse Rider, where you aspire to become one of the Four Horsemen. Well, they're called Riders of the Apocalypse in this campaign setting. You are truly evil, at least if you think destruction of all things is an evil thing. Your feats are about destruction and about fighting with a mount, who is also taking part in the destruction. I'm not going to go over all of the feats in these Mythic Destinies. There are, by my estimate, between 100 and 150 of them, and many of them are long, as I said. So I'm going to highlight each one's dedication and then select feats that I thought were the most interesting. Alright, so here's the 12th level dedication feat for Apocalypse Rider. Well, what's notable here is that it gives you a powerful companion, a nimble or savage companion with a single feat. Usually this requires taking 3 feats in a chain for you to get your animal companion to be that powerful. However, if you had at least a young animal companion, the first feat in the chain, their unarmed attacks increase by 1 die size. Some Mythic Destinies involve a new anathema, and this is one of them. You cannot plan to cheat your own death or make anything lasting beyond your death. If you violate this, you lose all the powers from this archetype. There's a level 14 feat that you can take to make your animal companion specialized. That is the last feat in the advancement chain for animal companions, and the one that you can take multiple times. There's a notable level 16 feat. I don't know of other feats, except for ones in this book, that let your animal companion gain a fly speed and also bear you while flying. Normally you have to take a special advanced companion type, like a griffin, to do this. I learned recently while making my Make an Animal Companion video that it's kind of hard to make an animal companion fly. You can't just give them the magical item, the Barding of the Zephyr, because its armor class is kind of bad for dex-based animals. Well, anyway, now Megan can fly while bearing me into battle, so long as I make her an agent of the apocalypse. The level 16 feat, To War, is a 3-action activity that basically lets you ride your mount to trample over enemies, doing their unarmed strike damage to a bunch of foes who have to do reflex saves, and they can become off guard if they critically fail as well. And all of your allies get bolstered and inspired by this. They get temporary hit points and do extra damage for a round. Finally, every Mythic Destiny has a level 20 feat that you can take that effectively gives you immortality. Immortal Ruin gives you the Daemon, Fiend, and Unholy traits, and also your Apocalypse mount. So long as your mount is alive, you don't age and you don't die. If your doomed or dying condition would increase to 4, which if you remember, if you're mythic, your doomed value has to increase to a certain number for you to die, it doesn't actually increase. Then it says if you would be killed in any other way, you are simply reduced to 0 hit points and are unconscious, and I assume not dying. And if your mount is conscious, it instantly teleports to you and picks you up. Meanwhile, if you're conscious and within 30 feet of your mount, and your mount would quote-unquote die, it is not killed. It says it cannot be killed. Instead, they go to 0 hit points and are stable. Interestingly, it points out that if your mount's doomed condition would increase to 4 or more, it does not increase. So that implies that the death and dying rules for mythic characters also applies to your Apocalypse mount, which I don't think was spelled out earlier. The other ability is that when a living creature within 60 feet of you dies, they must do a will saving throw. If they fail, they cannot be brought back to life within 24 hours. So this negates any in-combat resurrection abilities, which can be important at these high levels. On a critical failure, their soul gets trapped in a soul gem. You can make that soul gem permanent, and any attempt to revive them, the caster has to overcome you with a religion check. Alright, the next one is the Archfiend. You get to be a Lord of Hell or some other terrible place. The feats you get from this involve you ruling some kind of realm, and also enhancing your ability to persuade and control others. Your dedication feat gives you a personal realm. You name it and describe its appearance. It has some kind of hostile terrain that has an associated damage type, whether that's acid, cold, electricity, fire, or poison. You gain resistance to that damage type or enhance your resistance to it. And once per hour, you can manifest your realm around yourself. Enemies treat it as difficult terrain and have a penalty to their fortitude saves in it. It's also something that you need to sustain. There are feats that let you enhance or use this realm in other ways, and one of them is Manipulate Realm, which is a level 14 feat. If you spend a mythic point when you manifest your realm, you can, whenever you sustain it, which costs an action, you can, for free, do one of these 3 things. And you can sustain it multiple times per round, according to the rules. You can drain your realm, draw some of it, to reduce its radius by 10 feet, to heal you and give you extra energy damage to your strikes. You can spread the realm and increase its radius. You can also unleash the realm and deal your realm's energy damage to all enemies within its area. Level 18 has this really cool feat called Brandish Authority. You manifest some visible sign of your power, whether that's a crown or a scepter, or anything else you can think of. You get to try to demoralize every enemy within 30 feet, and you don't get any penalty for not having a shared language. Also, so long as your sign is manifested, which is 1 minute, they cannot reduce the value of their frightened condition below 1. Additionally, if you spend a mythic point, this becomes even more cool. At the beginning of each one of their turns, if they're frightened by you, which remember they cannot get rid of for the next minute probably, then they must make a will save, and if they fail, they drop prone. And if they critically fail, they cannot stand during that turn. So that was a cool ability. There's another level 18 feat called Imprisoned Foe, and this seemed pretty strong too. If you deal damage to a creature, then your next action can be to banish them to an extra dimensional prison within your realm. You spend a mythic point and they have to do a will saving throw. And even if they succeed, they're stunned too. They lose 2 actions and lose the ability to make reactions. But if they fail, they are truly screwed. This doesn't have the incapacitation trait, by the way. They are transported into a cell within your extra dimensional dungeon for a minute. And when their turn starts, if they have a successful will save, they reduce the duration of that minute by 1 round. They have to succeed 10 times or do 1 critical success, but that can take someone out of the battle. So it's kind of like the maze spell, which has now been changed to the quandary spell in the remaster. This allows them a saving throw, however, but if they are banished to that other realm, they are quite screwed for a while. The next feat is also level 18. All these cool feats that are competing for your attention, and this one is rare, and actually this one is even more amazing, I think, than the other ones. You strike a profane bargain with a willing sapient creature. They promise to never take hostile actions against you, to never lie to you, to never speak of this bargain, and to do a task or refrain from a task. If they accept your offer, they can make a request that you can realize as if you had done the wish ritual by spending a mythic point. And there's no cost to doing this, and there's no limitation on how often you can do it. You can do the wish ritual as long as it's for other people and they're willing to sell their soul to you, basically. As long as the bargain persists, you always know where they are, can communicate with them telepathically, and once per day take control of them for 10 minutes, and they have no memory of the time spent under your control. If they ever break the terms of this bargain, then one of the following happens. Your choice. They die, or they die and you possess their soul. They become permanently controlled by you, or if you have the Imprisoned Foe feat, the other level 18 feat we just looked at from earlier, they become imprisoned in a cell in your dungeon. This clearly can be really fun for a more open-ended campaign. There is a danger of an optimization-minded party exploiting this and having every PC make a profane bargain with the Archfiend. Just be mindful of that. The level 20 feat is Fiend Eternal. This allows your realm that you've been manifesting to become an actual part of the multiverse. It becomes a complete reality, forming a section of Hell, the Outer Rifts, the Netherworld, or its own fiendish demiplane, or some other planar space of your choosing. Whenever you would die, you are instead teleported to your seat of power within your realm. In addition, you have a small group of fiendish followers who are in your realm, who can constantly spy on the mortal world for you. They allow you to recall knowledge or gather information about any topic with no chance of getting wrong information. The next Mythic Destiny is the Ascended Celestial. Looking at its abilities made me think of a super paladin, an angelic warrior who protects itself and others. Their dedication, first of all, makes you very headstrong. Once per hour, you can roll a will saving throw twice and use the better result. Also, if you are ever confused, you never do anything against your will. You just stand there very stubbornly. And you also emanate a nimbus of light. 30 feet bright light, 30 more feet of dim light. You always have the option to suppress your nimbus. All of your allies within your nimbus get a bonus to saves against fear. You can use the Bless Ally action once every 10 minutes. Bless an ally within the bright light of your nimbus, and they get to roll any will saving throw twice and use the better result before the start of your next turn. So you can see the theme here is one of leadership and bolstering yourself and your allies against what might come. There are feats that key off of this nimbus. Channel Divine Spark is a level 14 feat that lets you double the radius of the nimbus, and you get buffed for the next minute. You cannot suppress your nimbus of light during this minute, but you get temporary hit points, resistance to physical damage, and are quickened Kind of like the haste spell, your bonus action can be used only to strike or stride. Also, every time you damage a creature with a strike, you can, as a free action, try to shove or trip them. This level 18 feat is truly amazing. It is called Army of One. You need to first have the level 16 feat Celestial Armaments, which I did not show, which basically gives a weapon of your choice. It gives it a bonus 1d8 spirit damage, and some other nice benefits. Here, if you spend a mythic point, you get to attack every enemy within the bright light of your Nimbus with your Celestial Armament, and the multiple attack penalty does not apply to these attacks until after you're done. This is like the Whirlwind Strike feats of some classes on steroids, because it's not limited by your weapon's reach. It's every enemy within 30 feet. Also, if you channeled your Divine Spark, that other feat we just saw on the last page, your Bright Nimbus is a 60-foot radius. The weapon, of course, returns to your hand. Truly amazing ability. The next one is a very powerful buff of your whole party. When you spend, it's called Shining Glory, and if you spend a mythic point, all allies in the bright light of your Nimbus get a +3 status bonus to all attack rolls and skill checks and saves against fear. They essentially get much of the benefit, not all of the benefit, of the 9th rank Heroism spell, but it's to all of your allies within that bright part of your Nimbus. If that weren't already enough, every enemy within the bright light of your Nimbus must do a will saving throw or become frightened and possibly step away from you or have trouble perceiving you because your light is so bright. They're frightened even on a successful saving throw, and they cannot lower that frightened condition below 1 while remaining in the bright light of your Nimbus. Now, the one limitation to this is that all of your allies, it looks like they have to stay within the bright light of your Nimbus for the benefits to them to last. But you could, again, expand that to 60 feet with the earlier feat. The level 20 feat is called Celestial Rebirth. You become immortal, you cannot die from old age, immune to poison and disease, and get the celestial and holy traits, as well as one of these other traits like Angel or Agathion. You have free daily castings of spells like Breath of Life and Heal. In addition, you can use your mythic points to cast Raise Dead as a 10th rank spell. There is one caveat, however. If you die, you cannot be resurrected. You immediately are reborn as a Nephilim, and so you become a baby. You can choose to be in the material plane, the universe, or heaven, or some other similar place. And then you get raised by celestials. You regain all your old memories and powers, but you have to grow up again within the campaign, so time will need to pass. Maybe not desirable from a player optimization standpoint, but it is thematically very evocative and cool. Next is the Beast Lord, which means you have an intense bond with a companion. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an animal. It could be a plant creature, like an arboreal. Or it could be a construct, like an Inventor's Construct companion. And in a sidebar, it even talks about an undead companion as a possibility. Most of your feats involve this bond and fighting together with your companion. Your dedication feat requires that you first have a mature animal companion, or the equivalent of a construct companion. Whatever their intelligence was before, they now have a language that they can secretly share with you, and their intelligence becomes at least +0, or average human intelligence. They can speak in chirps, grunts, or other noises that only you understand, kind of like R2-D2. If you are within 30 feet of each other and conscious, then anytime either of you is affected by a mental effect and has to make a saving throw, both of you make the roll and you get to use the better roll. The level 16 feat, Defend Our Union, is kind of similar to Retributive Strike from the pre-remaster Paladin, post-remaster Justice Champion. Basically, if you and your companion are within 15 feet of each other and an enemy successfully strikes your companion, you can stride over as a reaction and make a melee strike, or attack with a ranged weapon so long as it's within your first range increment. If you hit, then you reduce the incoming damage by your level, and if you critically hit, twice your level. Unified Stance is a stance that you can take with one action. You and your united companion need to be within 15 feet of each other, and it effectively makes your companion hastened or quickened. They get an extra action. Whenever they're commanded, this extra action can be used to stride or strike. The next feat is called Creature of Myth. It's a level 18 feat. You know how you can take feats to advance your companion, and there's a series of 4 feats that you can take, the last one being specialized? This is like a 5th feat in the sequence. If you have a specialized companion, you can give them an even more amazing advancement. And there's actually a list of 4 options. You get to choose one of them when you take this feat. I didn't have space on the screen, nor time in this video, which is already going to be too long, to cover them all. But there are these 2 that I wanted to highlight. The first is Chimeric Heads, which makes your animal sprout an extra head. And you can spend a mythic point to command your animal to give them a bonus attack, basically. Well, actually more than that. They spend a single action to attack twice with the same accuracy. And it only counts as 1 attack for future attacks in terms of the multiple attack penalty. One of the attacks needs to be coming from the head. It needs to be a jaws attack or mandibles attack, for example. But that definitely adds to the offensive punch of your companion. The other one is Magnificent Flight, which lets your animal fly, obviously, which, as I said before, is very difficult to give to most companions, and it gives your companion the mount special ability, so it can bear you while flying. And you can also spend a mythic point to do something that's like flyby attack, where you command your animal, they, for 2 actions, can fly twice, and at any point during their movement, they can make an unarmed melee strike. Alright, so that's cool. The next feat is Pack of the Beast Lord, which is like turning your animal into a swarm for a minute. It's also a level 18 feat. You spend 3 actions to create figment duplicates of your companion that form a massive swarm of formidable power. They become gargantuan, and they get swarm-like traits. They're immune to precision damage, they are resistant to physical damage, and have a weakness to area damage. And they get the Amassed Assault action. For 1 action, they basically get to do damage to, like a swarm, automatically to every enemy in their space, and the enemies have to do a basic reflex save to try to avoid that damage. This happens automatically at the completion of this 3-action activity, and in future turns, it can be a single action by your companion. However, it does have the attack trait, so it is subject to the multiple attack penalty and contributes to the multiple attack penalty. So that's a pretty amazing ability. Now let's look at the level 20 feat. It's called 1 Life, 2 Vessels. Again, this kind of makes you and your companion immortal. If one of you dies, then your consciousness is drawn into the other. And again, I do believe animal companions become mythic also and are harder to kill like you are. Unless someone corrects me, and Paizo is free to correct me. But this is pretty cool. You can actually jointly inhabit your animal companion's body with your animal companion, or vice versa. And if you're the one who dies, then after 3 days, you are returned to life. If it's your animal companion that died, you can get your animal companion back with a 1-hour ritual during your next daily preparations. Now, this last part's really cool. If you are, while in this merge state, if you die then you both truly die. You can still be resurrected through normal means. However, if you're not revived within a year, you're both reincarnated as children in a location near when you first became companions. You have no memory of the other. However, if you ever encounter each other, you feel an inkling of your former connection should you ever meet. I just thought that was really cool. However, you must form that bond soon, because if one of you is killed before that bond is reformed, you die as normal. Next is the Broken Chain, and this is a revolutionary hero, a leader of a revolution. You are all about opposing tyranny and being a leader to others in opposing that tyranny. Your dedication feat, it's a long one, gives you the following abilities. You can spend a mythic point to escape or force open something at mythic proficiency, and you get the Ultimatum of Liberation ability. You must use it on a creature you believe is oppressing others. In fact, it's anathema if you directed it at anyone else. You can only use this once per day, but you basically declare war essentially against that individual and all who follow their orders. Everybody who hears your ultimatum or finds out about it subsequently gets a bonus to saving throws against that oppressing creature and their allies. Increases to +3 if they're near you. Additionally, the first time that target creature and any of their allies gets within 30 feet of you, they need to do a will save or become frightened. This can, of course, all end if the target creature agrees to end their oppression. Otherwise, this is a permanent ultimatum. However, you can only have one ultimatum active at a time. This level 14 feat I thought was funny because it's an explicit reference to the black bloc in real-life politics. It is called Block Tactics, and basically you provide a bunch of disguises to people to prevent people from ascertaining their identities, and they get a bonus, a +3 status bonus to saves against smoke, fumes, and inhaled substances. So it's the anti-surveillance and anti-tear gas feat. The next feat is You Can't Keep Us Down, a very dramatic feat that you can only do once per day. You spend 3 actions. If you have any downed allies or those who have the wounded condition, they immediately are healed, an amount equal to 3 times your level, all of those within 60 feet of you at least, and if they are prone, they immediately stand up as a free action. And that does not provoke reactions. You can't keep us down. So a very cinematic moment if you have this ability. This is even more dramatic, I would say, called Remember Their Names, level 16. You spend 2 actions. You need to have your ultimatum active, and you tell your target the names of their victims, searing them into the oppressor's mind, causing them to feel their victim's pain. They take 12d6 mental damage. They get to do a will save to try to reduce it. And if they fail their check, their saving throw, they take 2d6 persistent mental damage. And if they get rid of that persistent damage, over the next hour, you or one of your allies can say one of those names again, and they have to make a saving throw again. And if they fail, they start getting that persistent mental damage again. This is considered a curse effect, and when you use it, you can't try it again on them for 24 hours. Broken Chain actually has 2 level 20 feats, and one of them is pretty cool. It's called Break the Causal Chain, where if something awful happens, you get to basically wish that it did not happen. However, in exchange, you have to agree that some previous event that led to the chain of events leading to that tragedy, let's say an ally died or a loved one, that is also negated as well. But the one I'll show you is You Can't Kill an Idea. If you would be killed while you have an ultimatum active, you become an idea form. While you are an idea form, you are invisible and incorporeal, and you are immune to all damage. Nothing can kill you while you're in this state. You can only take mental actions. However, you can telepathically communicate with your allies and aid them. You're like Obi-Wan Kenobi. You gain 2 extra reactions at the start of each of your turns, and you don't need to prepare to aid anybody before you aid them. So you can say things like, use the Force, Luke. Additionally, when you aid, your circumstance bonus that you provide increases by 1. Your aid attempt can have mythic proficiency if you spend a mythic point, which, if you're using rules as written, you're kind of automatically critically succeeding anyway. This may be important if you're using Ronald's rules of aiding. While you're in this idea form, you need to inhabit the body of a willing follower who becomes a fusion of your abilities and theirs. You work with your GM to figure that out. All of your previous equipment magically appears on this person, of course. However, if you don't fuse with a willing follower within an hour, then you die, and your equipment ceases to exist. Next is Eternal Legend. This is your classical myth hero of somebody who fights really well, and we'll see that in the feats. The Dedication feat makes you very resistant to negative effects. During your daily preparations, you choose either the Clumsy, Drained, or Enfeebled condition, and you are resilient against that condition that you choose. It's very similar to the Fighter's Bravery class feature, where if you succeed on an effect that would give you one of those conditions, you critically succeed instead. And if you ever gain that condition, you reduce its number by 1. What's cool about this is that it's versatile. Let's say you chose Clumsy at the beginning of the day, and you see a foe that will drain you. You can spend a single action to change which condition you are resilient against. All right, I'm going to show 2 feats on the screen, but I'm only going to talk about the bottom one. Basically, both of these are examples of action compression, of getting a discount on your actions, doing several things at once. The first one's actually, I think, cooler, but the second one I think is more broadly applicable and can be leveraged for power. It's called Leaping Hedgehog Strike. You leap towards a foe, and if you're adjacent to them, you get to try to tumble through them. If you succeed, they fall prone, and you get to immediately strike them if they fall prone. You can spend a mythic point to make that strike at mythic proficiency. Despite the artwork depicting a monk and this emphasis on mobility that we see in these 2 feats on the screen, these Eternal Legend feats work on any martial class, I believe. So you can be a fighter who takes Leaping Hedgehog Strike, tumble through somebody, knock them prone, and if they try to stand up, they're subject to your reactive strike. This next one has a very cool name called Exaltation Overwhelming. It's a level 18 feat, and you can only do it once per day and it costs a mythic point. But basically you raise your weapon or your fist aloft. You fulminate with power and glory, making clear to all who see you that your legend is real and possibly even greater than purported. All enemies who can see you, no range limit, must make a will saving throw, and if they fail, they're frightened 3. That is a big debuff. If they critically fail, they are frightened 4. And you and any ally who saw you get to immediately do a strike or stride as a free action. And all of those strikes that come from that are at mythic proficiency. So it's a pretty strong ability, making it for a dramatic moment. Hence why it's only once per day. There's another awesome level 18 feat called Legend of Combat. For one action, you spend a mythic point, and for the entire next minute, you gain an extra reaction at the start of each of your turns. There's no limit on what that reaction is used for. So this is very useful for a lot of martial classes. And also, you gain the Speed of Arms reaction. When your turn starts, you can, as a reaction, make a strike against an opponent within your reach or stride towards them. And this strike, if it's the first time you strike them, this encounter, it's done at mythic proficiency. So this is particularly good if you are probably hitting more than one foe over the course of this combat. You get to do multiple mythic strikes. Now note, a reaction that happens during your turn still contributes to the multiple attack penalty, but still quite good. There are actually 2 level 20 feats we'll look at for the Eternal Legend. The first is Finish Their Story, which is kind of a fancy way of saying kill them. And this one is the only feat I've seen that I thought was kind of meh. You spend a mythic point to make a strike, and it costs 2 actions, and if they're 16th level or lower and you hit, they die instantly. However, if they're 17th level or higher, then you do 3 additional damage dice if you hit. 18th level or higher, it's 2 additional damage dice. So outside of foes that are 4 levels below you, it is kind of similar to Vicious Swing or Power Attack. However, this costs a mythic point. Sure, you get to do it at mythic proficiency, but those Vicious Swing is a level 1 feat, and actually does 3 extra damage dice no matter what level the foe is by this level. And it doesn't cost a mythic point. So I was kind of like meh when I read this. If there's a use case I'm not thinking of, please let me know in the comments. The other feat, the Immortal level 20 feat, is Living Epic. If you die, which of course is very hard to do because you're mythic, you instead disappear. And you reappear anywhere your name is spoken within the next week. One of your allies can do this, and however, it's better if a stranger speaks your name. Whoever they are, they have to be recounting your exploits, which might be your death. But if a stranger invokes your name, then you return to life at full hit points, and you get a +1 status bonus to attacks, perceptions, saving throws, and skill checks for a week. So you get buffed as a result of dying. This ability to come back lasts 1 week. After that, you are subject to the normal rules of death. The next Mythic Destiny is the Prophesied Monarch, and this evokes all of those legends and tales about a predicted king or queen who's going to save the day, or someone who is immortal who once ruled but will come back. Now, the language of these feats refers to you have a set of followers who are called your knights. However, they make clear in the flavor text that this doesn't have to be being a monarch of a kingdom. You can be the leader of a pirate ship, or a religious leader of a church, or a head bandit in a forest. What matters is that you have a dominion or claim and bonded allies to enforce your claim. Your dedication feat lets you designate up to 5 allies as your knights. And basically, so long as you're conscious, if your allies are mythic, none of them can die because their doom condition cannot rise above 3 as long as they're conscious. And if any of them are in mortal peril, you get a vision that they are in peril. You also get the Royal Grace Exploration activity. If any of your allies has the doomed condition, you can give them counsel and talk about plans for your future kingdom, for example. You do a diplomacy or society check, and if you succeed, then their doomed condition goes down. So you're already a cool person that other mythic people, especially mythic people, will want to hang around. But a lot of the feats express this idea of real loyalty, of a mutual obligation between vassal and ruler, such as this level 16 feat called My Kingdom, My Blood. With 3 actions, you stride or use some other movement speed, and then you plant your fist or weapon into the ground, and there's a 60-foot emanation aura around you, where if any of your allies takes damage, you can take half of that damage yourself. This costs you your reaction. And the reverse is true. If you take damage, any one of your allies can use their reaction to take half of that damage. This works so long as you have hit points. And there's no limit to how often you can do this, and it does not cost a mythic point. Next is Decree of Execution. You pronounce a foe must die, and you do a lot of damage to them and possibly kill them. It can only be done once per day. You use it against a creature within 60 feet, and they get a will saving throw. If you try it against them, they are immune to this ability for 1 year, so make it count. But this is what it does. If they succeed on their saving throw, they drop to 1 hit point of their low level. If they're 15th level or higher, they take 50 spirit damage. That's on a successful saving throw. That's not nothing. However, you can only use this once per day. Also, it has the incapacitation trait. However, you can remove the incapacitation trait by spending a mythic point so that it affects higher level creatures equally. But the failure effect is where this gets awesome. Not only do low level creatures die instantly, but 15th level or higher creatures, if this reduces them to 0, they die instantly. And, this is the big part, they get weakness 20 to all damage for 1 minute. A blow that does multiple damage types gets plus 20 damage for every damage type. It also means that something that does persistent damage, like an Alchemist Fire, a level 1 Alchemist Fire that does 1 fire damage per turn, is going to do 21 damage per turn. This is pretty crazy. Critical failure adds on top of that and makes them, well, it says stunned 1 for 1 minute, which is, I think, supposed to say slowed 1 for 1 minute, because you can't combine a value with stunned and a duration. But anyway, you're fucking screwed if you critically fail against a Decree of Execution. Stick a fork in it, it's done. All right, your level 20 feat truly expresses the idea of an immortal monarch who will someday return. It's called Once and Future. You simply cannot die so long as one of your knights is alive and within 30 feet. And on top of that, the first time each year when you would die for a reason besides old age, you instead return to life. If you still truly die and none of those conditions are met, then you are still returned to life within a year as a newborn child in a mortal body somewhere in the world where stories about you are still told. And this always happens so long as mortal memory of you has not vanished, as long as there are tales about you. So this is very much evokes the idea of oral histories keeping alive the memories of heroes of the past. That is very important to a lot of older societies. All right, the next one is Wildspell. This is basically the magic mythic destiny that gives you the ability to manipulate magical force. Your dedication gives you a focus spell called Spell Surge, and that is 2 actions to create a 10-foot emanation around you. It lasts for a minute. They provide different support effects. One notable one is Ward, which reduces damage from damaging spells to any creature in the area, an amount equal to your level. Spell Surge lasts 1 minute, but you can choose to use the sustain action to switch its effect to one of the other ones. There's a good number of feats for the Wildspell. I'm only going to cover some of them. There's a number of feats that are related to your Spell Surge. This level 14 feat is Extend Surge. It lets you increase the radius to 30 feet for a round. And if you spend a mythic point, it increases it to 60 feet for a round, and it remains at 30 feet for the remainder of the spell's duration. There's a number of spell shape feats. This one is called Mythic Heightening. You spend an action before casting the spell. It's limited to once per day, but when you cast it, you heighten it to your highest spell rank, as in addition to giving it mythic proficiency. So you get to, unlike that mythic feat we saw in the previous video, not only cast it at mythic proficiency, but heighten it to your highest rank without spending that higher rank spell slot. This next one's pretty cool, and optimizing players can probably find some powerful uses of it. It's called Imbue Spell, and it basically lets you give a spell to an ally so that they can, within the next hour, spend a single action with the Manipulate and Concentrate traits to kind of cast the spell themselves. And they don't need to be a spellcaster to do this. You can only imbue one spell at a time. But yeah, this lets you have an ally be able to do something they normally cannot do, and also for only a single action, no matter how many actions it took to cast the original spell. Imbue Spell, this ability, is a free action that you do immediately after casting the spell. So you can give somebody a 3-action heal with this. This next one's pretty cool. It's called Mana Detonation, level 18. You get the Arcane Explosion focus spell. You basically explode outward and reform as a glowing sphere. You basically do force damage to all creatures within 30 feet, and they are also pushed away from you. And then you become ghost-like. You get a lot of traits that are similar to ghosts. You're incorporeal and resistant to a lot of damage. While in this form, you cannot do many things, and any creature who ends their turn adjacent to you takes some more force damage. But the kicker, what's nice, is that once you dismiss this, which takes a single action, you return to your normal state at maximum hit points. So you get to heal yourself to full by using this. It's actually 2 actions to use it, and you can spend your 3rd action to come back. That's a little crazy for a single focus point. Just don't have any friends who are near you, I suppose. We're actually going to look at 2 level 20 feats. The first one is Mystic Life Force. This is our immortality feat. Basically, if you have your Spell Surge active, you simply cannot die. And you cannot die except due to old age. Which is funny. You can't cast Spell Surge over and over again to avoid the Reaper, basically, from old age. So how are you immortal? Because you can't have Spell Surge on all the time. Well, it also says that if you die for any reason, you turn into a magical font that is attached to an allied creature of your choice within 1 mile, and they instantly get knowledge of the following ritual, which is a rank 8 ritual, costs 2,000 gold to revive you. It takes a day for them to do so. But even before they revive you, you can still, once per hour, cast Spell Surge centered on your ally, and still have some effect on the world through Spell Surge. The last feat for Wildspell is Surging Interference. This is like Counteract Plus. As a reaction, if a creature casts a spell within your Spell Surge aura, which, remember, if you spend a mythic point to expand it with that earlier feat, can be 30-foot radius, then you can attempt to counteract that spell. There's no requirement to have the spell prepared or in your repertoire. You don't even need to recognize the spell or have any of the previous counteract feats. And if you succeed, you absorb the magical energy and regain one of your spell slots of 8th rank or lower. You can regain a 9th rank spell slot if you spend a mythic point at this time. So this looks pretty strong to disrupt enemy spellcasting. All right, now we get to what some of you have been waiting for, which is the Godling archetype. This is the one that lets you eventually become a deity in the campaign setting. For the dedication feat, there's no requirement. There's no requirement to be a specific class or have anything else. The general idea here is that you're eventually going to become a deity who can confer spells, including domains, cleric domains, to worshippers, usually champions and clerics. And so the abilities we'll see are kind of themed towards clerics and divine magic. Your dedication gives you your own domain. Now, you might think, oh, I'm not a cleric. This doesn't look relevant to me, and I want to be a god. Well, there's a whole wide range of domains in this game, and I'm going to show on the screen the very long list. There are many domains that can be appropriate to other classes, very appropriate, such as trickery or might or lightning or fire. You also learn the initial domain spell of that domain. But the other main thing you get from the dedication is you gain a Hierophant, a high priest of your new faith, who is normally going to be another member of your party. Someone who will spread your word and provide an anchoring mortal presence as your perspectives are increasingly pulled toward the cosmic. They also gain your initial domain spell as well, and gain, therefore, spellcasting if they didn't have it before. By the way, they use your focus points to cast your domain spells. You, meanwhile, gain expert proficiency in spellcasting if you did not have that before. You and your Hierophant have to use your wisdom or charisma modifier to cast this domain spell. Also, your Hierophant, and not you, I thought this choice was strange, only your Hierophant can spend a mythic point to cast any divine spell at mythic proficiency. I guess the idea is actually you are empowering others more than you are yourself through this mythic destiny, which I think is a deliberate and interesting choice. Already from the get-go, we have this idea of you empowering others' spellcasting. A level 14 feat basically lets you gain 3 additional domains. You can only have 1 active at once. You learn the initial domain spell of each, and also the advanced domain spell, I believe, of each of your now 4 domains. Your Hierophant also accesses these as well. However, you can only have 1 domain active at a time. The exception is when you spend a mythic point to overcharge your divine power, and you get access to all the domains for the next minute. Your Hierophant has access as well. You also don't have to choose these 3 additional domains immediately when you take the feat. You can leave some of these slots open and decide later and make it happen at a moment appropriate in your story. You can spend a mythic point as a single action to claim a domain in the middle of a battle. Next is Gird Champion. Level 16 feat. You get to designate what will eventually be your deity's favorite weapon when you become a deity. You choose a type of weapon, and you and your Hierophant both become proficient in it because it becomes a simple weapon for both of you. So you actually can access martial and even advanced weapons with this feat, apparently. You and your Hierophant both get the critical specialization effect of the weapon and do an additional 1d6 spirit damage with strikes with the weapon. Also, it doesn't need to be spirit damage. If one of your domains is like, for example, fire or lightning, you can do a corresponding type of damage, extra damage, with your favorite weapon. All right, the next feat is Pass Vengeful Judgment, and this is pretty strong and dramatic. It's a once per day ability. Basically, if your Hierophant strikes a foe, they can spend a single action to invoke your wrath, and you can then spend an action, this is limited to once per day, to pass Vengeful Judgment, and you call down a scouring pillar of divine energy that does 20 d10 spirit damage. I don't know if spells that do more damage than this. That's an average of 110 damage. It is sanctified, so it gains the holy or unholy trait if you have it. It also can be another type of damage appropriate to one of your domains. But in addition, you can spend a mythic point so that it blasts from the heavens, scattering the clouds, and a detonation visible to all creatures within a 10-mile radius as a show of wrath and a warning to those who would dare harm your followers or question your commandments. You're already sounding like the Old Testament God, basically. For the next month, you and your Hierophant gain a +2 status bonus to intimidation checks to creatures in that 10-mile radius. Hold on. Oh, shit. Hello? Hello? Hi. Oh my god, I've been multitasking. I've been dealing with website technical difficulties and recording the video. Yeah, I'm sorry. So are we on Zoom? I'll join it in 1 minute. Also, if you have one of the earlier Godling feats, you can make this damage vitality or void damage instead as a choice. All right, next is the big one, becoming a god. Level 20 feat, assume godhood. This is where you become a deity. And okay, if you know Pathfinder, you're not going to be surprised. You get to serve as a deity for classes with the deity feature. You get to grant them divine spellcasting and domain spells. Your deity skill will be something you're legendary in, and your divine attributes will be your key attribute from your class and another one of your choosing. Also, like with every deity, you get to choose some low-rank spells that are outside the divine list that your divine spellcasters still have access to. So this is all campaign-level stuff, arguably, not stuff that helps you win a fight. However, do not underestimate the increase in your popularity and your sway over people now that you can grant divine spells. Additionally, once per day, you can allow your Hierophant to cast a spell, whether it's a focus spell, spell slot, what have you, and not actually use the resource. So this can be actually a 10th rank spell that they cast. It doesn't have to be something they get via you. So if your Hierophant is, say, a wizard, they can cast a 10th rank spell, and you can divinely allow them to not use that resource and cast a second 10th rank spell that day. Also, if you die, you can continue your existence as a deity, watching over the universe from afar. You cannot move. You cannot speak or act normally. Some of your feat abilities you can still do, like receive prayers or intercession spell, this ability you just got with this feat. However, you still don't waive your right to return back to the world and descend, incarnate yourself into a mortal body, which has the same statistics and abilities you had before you died. And of course, if you die again, you can still assume your deific form, so you are immortal. The only thing it says is advice to not incarnate yourself too much, because this will typically attract the attention and sanction of older and more established deities. All right, so those are our Mythic Destinies. We're not going to cover the remainder of Mythic rules that are introduced in this book. Mythic items. Well, first I was disappointed, first of all, that there weren't any unique Mythic weapons or suits of armor or wondrous items, generic magic items that were Mythic included in this book. We do get Mythic artifacts, which I'll get to in a second. However, for other items, what we get actually are Mythic runes for armor and weapons. They're what you would expect. They're the next step in the progression. So instead of +3 to armor and weapons, you get +4 from these Mythic items. And they're 20th level items and they're rare. However, they've done a cool thing here, which is give them unique abilities. So these abilities, which are quite powerful, can be grafted onto any of the unique weapons and armor that already exist in the game. So Mythic Armor Potency, in addition to giving you a increase to your armor's item bonus of 4, also has a reaction. Whenever an enemy critically hits you with a strike, you spend a Mythic point and you force that to become a normal success instead. And if they were non-Mythic, it becomes a failure instead. This is really strong because we all know the power of extreme results in this game. There is no daily limit on how often you can do this either, so long as you have a Mythic point. This reaction is called Survive Devastation. The Mythic Resilience rune, in addition to giving you a +4 item bonus to your saving throws, gives you the Defy Obliteration reaction. With the reaction, you spend a Mythic point when you critically fail a saving throw. You turn that critical failure into a failure if it came from a Mythic foe. If it came from a non-Mythic foe, it goes up 2 degrees of success instead and becomes a successful saving throw. Let's look at the Mythic Weapon runes. Mythic Weapon Potency gives you a +4 item bonus to your weapon. Its reaction is called Unerring Blow. If you critically fail a strike with this weapon, you can spend a Mythic point to re-roll the attack roll with Mythic Proficiency, so with a better proficiency, and you get to take the higher of the 2 results. Well, you definitely don't want that first result, so you're going to take that second result. But this means you get a second chance on strikes with Mythic Proficiency. Mythic Striking gives you 5 dice of damage on your weapon instead of 4 from the Major Striking rune. Its reaction is called Unstoppable Devastation. When you don't like the result of your damage dice with a strike with this weapon, you get to spend a Mythic point and re-roll the dice and use the higher of the 2 results. This is a rare instance where you can re-roll weapon damage dice. I don't know of many others in Pathfinder. All of these Mythic Fundamental runes for your weapons and armor help you stave off very bad luck. All right, next we get to Mythic Artifacts, and there are huge write-ups on these, and they're all very interesting and thematic, and each one of them gives you a story of how it was made and how one can find them or qualify to use them. These backgrounds and the way to use these items read like classical myths. I'm only going to go over one of them, and that's going to be the World Forge. It's a level 25 artifact. We're given lore about how the god Torag, the god of creation, infused his power into it. Prophets claim that if Golarion itself is near destroyed, the World Forge can remake everything. Torag is the master of the World Forge, and one must prove to Torag that they are a master artisan at the pinnacle of their skill before being allowed inside the World Forge's building. Now, what can you craft with the World Forge? It needs to be something. You attempt to craft something upon it. That's all it says. It can be anything. It even mentions legends of one being able to craft a Grave Knight's Mercy or the Tears of a Living Wildfire. And the cost and the DC of making that something is up to the GM. Now, every day you craft with it, you need to spend a mythic point or you become drained 1 or your drain value increases. You don't want your drain condition to reach 4 or else you might die. You got to do a fortitude save. Each extra day you spend crafting on the World Forge counts as 10 days of normal crafting time. Next, we get to mythic spells, which are like other spells. They go from rank 1 to rank 10 like other spells, but you need to spend a mythic point when you cast them, and need to be a mythic character, of course. And if not more powerful, let's say you get to affect the story more. There's not a whole lot of them. There's 13 spells in the book, over 4 pages, and my brief perusal of them, they struck me as being good spells for their rank. I'm only going to highlight a few. This one was actually highlighted by Paizo in their blog, Travel by Turtle, where you get to summon an intelligent giant sea turtle to bear you and your party across a body of water for an hour. At higher ranks, it becomes a larger turtle and lasts longer. The 9th rank version can bear up to 32 medium creatures for up to a month. Several of these spells are incarnate spells. Those are the summoning spells that summon something grand into the battlefield that lasts 2 rounds. Here is a 10th rank mythic spell called Summon Oliphant of Jandalay. You actually summon the mythical Oliphant of Jandalay, which is actually one of the mythic monsters in the book. Now, unless I'm missing something, when I looked at this, I thought it was not a whole lot more powerful than, say, Summon Kaiju, which is a non-mythic 10th rank incarnate spell. It does 8d10 force damage in a 60-foot burst. However, what happens next is pretty cool thematically. It realizes it's been summoned to a world that is not on the verge of annihilation. And so it angrily creates a gate in front of it, 200 feet in front of it, and charges forward, crushing everything in its path. In an 80-foot wide path of devastation, every creature or vehicle destroyed by it is smashed into fine powder. Any unattended object can be destroyed, and any force effect, like a wall of force, is automatically destroyed. I thought that was pretty cool, but the one that stood out to me most, I thought was the coolest, was the Final Fate of the Locust Host, a 7th rank mythic spell. This is a rare spell. You get to actually conjure the rotting corpse of Daskari, the former lord of the Locust Hosts, into the battlefield, swarming with bugs. It has a very powerful effect. Every foe, only enemies within a 60-foot emanation of this gargantuan creature, must make a fortitude save, and even if they succeed on their saving throw, they become sickened 2. That is quite strong. And a failure is sickened 3 and deafened, and critical failure sickened 4, deafened, and they become stunned 1. And when this corpse departs, the millions of insects and vermin pour out and surge across the battlefield, doing a bunch of piercing and poison damage, and if someone critically fails their save, they are drained 2. I pointed this out because I thought it's cool thematically, and also it imposes the sicken condition on a success, and it does not have the incapacitation trait, so it seems pretty strong. Making an enemy sickened 2 is essentially like giving them the weak template, lowering their level by 1, until they spend actions to try to remove that condition. Next are mythic rituals, and as you might expect, the story-shaping power that is usually reserved for rituals in Pathfinder is only increased with the rituals included here. However, the wish ritual is not here. It remains a non-mythic ritual, which is a glaring exception, needless to say. Here's the list of rituals. There's 13 of them. They work like every other ritual, except that the primary caster needs to be a mythic character who spends a mythic point when they attempt it. They do get to do their primary check at mythic proficiency while doing it, so long as they are trained in the skill. We see some familiar effects here if you're familiar with D&D or 1st edition Pathfinder, like Create, Demiplane, Freedom, and Imprisonment. But a lot of these are new, and I'm going to highlight a few of them. First is the City of Sin. It's a 7th rank ritual. And you can see the ability for mythic characters to affect the world around them on full display in these rituals. In a 7-mile radius around you, for 1 month, intelligent creatures within range become increasingly prone to shed their inhibitions. If you succeed, they all get -2 circumstance penalty to saves against mental effects and coercion and requests. That becomes -4 on a critical success. But narrative-wise, what's more interesting is that intelligent creatures start to indulge in vices and violating all but their strongest convictions. And on a critical success, you can get them to betray even their most closely held convictions, including behaviors anathema to their class or faith. You can basically transform an entire city of people in how they act. Next is World in Shadow. With this ritual, it's a 5th rank one and you have to do it at night. You make darkness everlasting in an 8-mile radius circle around you. Now, a regular success lowers the light levels by 1 step, so bright light during the day becomes dim light. However, a critical success lowers the light levels by 2, so you get complete darkness in normal circumstances. This lasts for 5 days, and this can have a huge impact, obviously, on the game world. This does require 7 days of casting, however. The critical failure effect is hilarious. All of the casters are plunged into their own personal darkness where they each individually cannot see beyond 5 feet. This last one is Curse of Calamity, a 9th rank ritual that is rare. You got to spend 3 days, and you condemn your targets to a violent misfortune. Now, what's your target? It is an entire community, group, or settlement. A settlement can be a village or town or a neighborhood within a larger settlement. You can also, with GM's discretion, target a group of individuals who serve the same cause, such as a nation's army, have a shared identity, or are members of a single faith. If you succeed, all of the targets experience misfortune during even routine tasks that result in minor injuries. And when you're close, within 15 feet of them, and you're the primary caster of this ritual, every attack roll and skill check they make is with misfortune. They roll twice and use the worst result. The critical success version is the same, but the unfortunate accidents people experience are not minor. This includes extreme accidents like losing life and limb and other things. So it's mostly narrative, but this has a lot of narrative weight, obviously. You can basically curse an entire population. And if you get into combat with any member of the population you cursed, you can impose that powerful debuff on them. No saving throw. And this lasts for a whole year. And none of the rituals I talk about here have a cost entry. You can do terrible things for free. All right, so what are my final thoughts about mythic characters? My next video is going to be on mythic monsters. First, the effect on campaigns. These high-level abilities that we saw in this video really hit home the fact that a campaign with mythic characters are centered around the characters. The characters are the movers and shakers. You're not simply banding together against some villain that is driving the plot forward. And I'm not sure we'll see a Paizo adventure path that's structured to accommodate for that. There's the rare exception like Kingmaker, which is about player characters establishing their own kingdom, but that is the exception. And by the way, I wouldn't mind us getting a 2E conversion of Wrath of the Righteous, since there are now mythic rules for 2nd edition. I actually take back part of what I said. You can actually have mythic characters in a more structured linear campaign like many Paizo adventure paths. Paizo has released a mythic adventure path before, they just had mythic opponents for you to fight. These Mythic Destinies, however, invite a GM and a table to try out a more player-driven campaign. Back to how mythic rules affect balance. I'm already seeing 2 camps emerge in the discussions online about this book, and they are completely at odds. There are people who are concerned that there's some power creep in this book, not just in the fact that there's mythic rules, but also some options in other parts of the book that look like they are on the strong end of the spectrum. And then there are people expressing disappointment that the mythic rules don't let them bust the game wide open, or do things like the 1st edition mythic rules allowed you to do, or the Alcat game Wrath of the Righteous, how they implemented mythic rules. You don't see that kind of power here. My personal opinion is that it's okay to break the power levels of the current Pathfinder game with mythic rules. That's what you sign up for when you say you have mythic rules in your campaign after all. I'm only concerned that there be a consistency in the power of options within each mode of play. Within regular non-mythic play, that the new options in this book don't introduce power creep, and that the different mythic options we've been going over in these videos, that some of them are not clearly more powerful than others. All right, let's look at the book's guidance on running mythic campaigns at 12th level and above when Mythic Destinies come into play. It says to avoid trivial and low-threat encounters entirely. Use roleplay instead to resolve those situations. For significant boss fights that serve as the culmination of an ongoing plotline, they suggest using back-to-back severe threat encounters this time. And they say to save single opponents that are severe or extreme threat for groups that are at the highest level of play, who are fully experienced with their characters, fully rested and fully charged with mythic points, and wielding mythic weapons. And I assume they mean severe or extreme threat mythic solo monster here. On the book's suggestion to allow Mythic Destinies as non-mythic archetypes, this strikes me as acceptable. The feats that we've seen, a lot of them are powerful, however, they are higher level feats. If you'd want to compare them to high level feats that are already available to non-mythic characters now. But also the more powerful abilities, a number of them required a mythic point, which of course non-mythic characters don't have. There were some exceptions though, a few in this video, and I'm not sure there was quality control consistently implemented across the board. Also, a lot of them kind of assume your character is a leader who impacts the world around them, has a lot of ability to affect the story. That, of course, is a conversation to have with your GM to figure out what kind of campaign you're having. Now, I'm someone who runs pretty much exclusively pre-published adventures and adventure paths. However, these mythic rules look like a lot of fun, and I would want to try them out. For me, I would be limited to running those pre-published adventures, but making adjustments to the monsters so that they are mythic and can provide an appropriate challenge to the player characters. Mythic characters should fight mythic monsters. That's what the next video is going to be about. I'll be talking about mythic monsters and the rules that they give us there. On the Paizo forums, someone wrote, I was hoping Mythic would be the point at which a kaiju fight, for example, turns from a series of hazards to a creature stat block. And Michael Sayer, director of Rules and Lore, responded, it is. That caused a little stir in the Pathfinder subreddit when I shared the screenshot there, and we'll see in the third video whether they met that expectation or not. So if you want to be notified of that video and the subsequent videos in my coverage of War of Immortals, please subscribe and also ring the bell to get notified. Also, by supporting my Patreon, you'll get to see these videos early, right when I post them. And also, access to exclusive content. Join my Discord if you haven't yet. I hang out there a lot. We talk about Pathfinder 2e and other gaming, and we also have a drop-in, drop-out organized play system to play Pathfinder 2e that you can join called Endless Tale Tavern. So that's this video, and I will see you in the next one.